All right, hello everybody. This is a quick rundown of where we should be with our Pro Tools sessions, looking at key things we need to make sure we've included in our project. Okay, so number one, I've imported all my audio tracks. I'm using the Crimea River. You may choose the other song that we did, but here's Crimea River. I've imported all the drums. They're here. I've also imported the bass part and imported the extra synth played on the bass by Harrison, which is great. We have the acoustic guitar, two electric guitars, left and right, the electric piano, which is a stereo track, and the synth lead. I also have a master track here, and then finally my guide track, which is my guide mix. I've aligned them all so they're all in time with the guide track and with each other. So now if we just have a listen to this, I'm going to flatten out all the volumes on all of these, and you can do that two ways. You can go into the mix view by pressing Command and equals. I'll turn on my keycaster. So as we know, Command and equals will switch between our two windows, usually. There we go. And then clicking Option, holding Option, then clicking on a fader or knob will take it to its default position. So here are all our tracks. In addition to that, I have started to create some sub mixes using auxiliaries, but I'll go over that again in a second. I'll just revise that now. So I'll delete this extra auxiliary and I'll delete this auxiliary, and we'll explain that again in a minute. So currently, all of our audio tracks, if I select all of them, hold Option and Shift, and then click on an output and select my main output here. There's everything. Fantastic. So we just want to start by, I think in this song it makes sense because we don't have vocals yet, to use the kick drum as our reference. So I'm going to go into my mix window, and holding down Option, or not holding down Option, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my groups. Now we have groups on the left here. If you press Shift, Command, and G, it turns them all on. There's, you may have not have created any groups yet, so you might look like this. But there is a default all group, which you cannot delete. And when you select that all group, it selects all the tracks. So I'm going to click that, bring them all down to 0, and then turn off that group by clicking on it again. So now that group is off. I'm going to turn my master up to 0, so flat. And then we're going to turn our guide track just down a little bit. So not all the way up to 0, but we're going to turn it down maybe to -10 or -6, something like that. And now this is going to be our guide. The reason why I'm turning that down is this is the guide track has been mastered, and it's we just want to give ourselves a little bit of headroom. Okay, so let's listen to the solo, the guide track. And what I'm going to do is listen to the kick drum because that is my guide. That's what I'm going to focus on first. So listening to the level of the kick drum. You were my son. Cool. And then I'm just going to get my kick track, which is here. Either in this view, I can open up the floating fader and just set that to 0 and see how that sounds. I'll solo the kick drum, or better yet, just mute the guide. Solo the You were my son. It's in the ballpark. Cool. So my point being, we could use that as a guide to balance the rest of our tracks. Without adding any compression or anything like that yet, we could start to balance our tracks around it. So what we could do, just to get that kick, is I'm just wondering if we should add compression at this stage. I want to keep it simple to start with. Let's get that vocal in there. So here's our guide. You were my son. Oh, we don't have a vocal. What am I talking about? That's what makes this really hard. What's the next most prominent part? You were my son. Maybe that piano. And, well, now that we've got the kick there, we can just kind of build around it. So I'm going to mute the guide. There's our kick. Cool. Let's bring in some snare. Great. Now, do we need much overheads? Let's go to the overhead. I'll do it in this view here. You can see here the overheads. What are they giving us? I feel like the original production is pretty dry, so maybe we'll just have a little bit there. And let's leave the toms down until we get to some sections where there's lots of tom fills. We'll see if we need them. Now let's add in the bass. Listen to where the bass sits compared to the kick drum. You were my son. No bass there. Let's go to pre-chorus. Great, so let's add that in. It's not huge, it's kind of subtle. Use the floating fade. Mute the guide. Cool. What else do we have in there? Let's get that piano in there. So here's our electric piano. Cool. Maybe just a fraction louder. The electric piano actually seems surprisingly centered, and this is a good trick here. Either on the floating fader itself. Yes, on the floating fader. So I mean, clicking on the fader icon on the output to bring up the floating fader. We want to pan these in a little bit too wide. So this, you could individually do this and put these at like 40 or 50% each, like that. Or what you could do is click this button here, which links the two panners, and then invert them, and now we can just turn one and the other will turn with it. Very useful. Let's listen to that. Cool. With it in the middle, I could probably turn down a bit. Great. Now what else do we have to go with us? Cool, so we're kind of missing, there's a lot of mouth percussion either side, panned hard left and right on the original production, which we're missing. There's also like a string synth doing long notes, which we're kind of also missing, but we've got other instruments. Let's see if we can use them instead. So maybe we'll use the electric guitars here for that left-right kind of sound that the mouth percussion is giving us in the original production. So the way to do that, and one way to control these, is we could load them into a stereo track because it's two individually recorded but the same sounding electric guitars, or we could send their outputs to an auxiliary and use that to mix them together. So with both of the electric guitar tracks selected, I'm going to hold down Option and Shift and then click on one of the outputs and select New Track. We did this last week. And here we're going to type in something like electric guitars. And what that does is automatically creates a bus, or names a bus, electric guitars, or the same name as we put in the name of the track, sets the output of these to that bus, electric guitars, and sets the input of this auxiliary. So it's like we've connected the output of these two tracks into the input of this auxiliary track. So notice I've currently got the volume of these two individual tracks at 0, or at minus infinity. But what I could do is put them both up full to 0, and then take the volume of the electric guitar auxiliary submix and turn that down. So now full volume flowing into into here. But we still can't hear it because we have the main the auxiliary that they're routed to muted. I've got this set to solo safe. Now, whenever you create an auxiliary, 99% of the time you want to make it solo safe, which means that if we solo these tracks, the signal will still pass through. Zoom in a little bit with command square brackets. And I'm going to just fade this up. Cool. That's giving us that left and right kind of wide information that the mouth percussion is giving us on the other one. And then the mouth percussion is quite loud here. So we're going to... And what you notice is the one on the left is a little bit softer than the one on the right. So we could do this one of two ways. We could go into the fader for the right hand channel and just bring it down a fraction. And then look at the main output. There we go, it's a little bit more even now. Awesome. And what you might want to do on this one is put an EQ on it to take out some of the low frequencies. Because if we solo these, there's a lot of low frequencies that we might not want all the time. Just listening, the right hand side still sounds a bit louder to me. Cool. Maybe they're different voicings. Oh, they are. That's why. Ah, they're different voicings. Which is cool. But it kind of leaves us a little bit unbalanced on either side. What can we do about that? I'll do this and I'll stop the video. But one idea you could have, even though we're not to click, this still should work. So this is kind of like our high part, rhythm guitar 1, rhythm guitar high. And the next one was kind of like rhythm guitar low. So I've renamed them. We could duplicate this. This is getting creative. Duplicate. Just leave all that selected and press OK. And now I'm going to go, because the chord pattern is repeating, with this duplicate, I'm going to find where the chord progression changes. There it is, or where it repeats, sorry. I'm going to press tab with tab to transient selected, and then hit E, which extracts it or cuts the clip there. And then I'm going to cut this. And I'm just going to tab again to that first spot and press paste. Now what this has done, it's moved, kind of like shuffled this one forward. You can see we're missing some stuff here. And maybe just before I do that, I might chop this one as well. And just move this out of the way. Or just copy it. Move it out of the way for a second. Now cut that. Paste this in here. And what you'll hear, if I pan this left and right, it's kind of like evened it out, because even though it's the same chord voicing now, there's still a different performance of them because I've shuffled it forward. And then I'll put this one just at the end. And I might need to just manually slide it around to make sure it's kind of like on beat. But now we've created like some fake doubles almost, which is pretty cool. So now that's going to even up our left and right sound. And yes, you'd have to go on and do that for here and for here, but you could do that. And then do the same for your lower voicing, because remember, this is a lower voicing. This is just a good old studio producer trick here. So I'll duplicate this low voice and then do the same thing. So click on the track, press tab. And I know it's a 4-bar chord progression, so I can hold down shift and then tab, 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 tab. Command E to extract that, and then I'm just going to option click and drag it over there. Now cut this, paste it there, zoom out, and then take this one to fill in the gap at the end. Just line it up visually. It doesn't need to be perfect, that's kind of the whole point. And now we'll listen to those two, pan them left and right. Hey. And because they're lower in pitch, we can turn down the volume a little bit. And now if we listen to all four, we've got our fake doubles. Oh, great. And that kind of helps with the lacking stereo information that we have. And yes, now I'd need to go on and do that same kind of move, that edit where I chop this start and put at the end for each of these. But that wouldn't be too hard. Last thing would be to add an EQ on this, on the group or this auxiliary here. I'm going to use this one and just use the high pass filter. Maybe set it at 12 to 1 and just using my ears, just listening, taking out some of those low frequencies. Cool, we are well on our way. See you in the next video.